Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Friends with Death Benefits. I'm your host, Tiff Mussman, and with me as always, you know him, I tolerate him, Justin Paulson.
Hey guys, how's it going?
How are
Glad
you?
to be here. I'm doing all right.
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Interesting week. Always is.
I like this angle today. We can stare each other in the eyes and get real weird about it. Pretty excited.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it. How was your week?
It was an all right week for the most part. You know, there's ups, there's downs, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I did some stuff yesterday that I'd been putting off for quite a while. When my mom had her funeral in June, I made a couple like collage cork boards of like all these pictures of her and stuff. I tried to make it from like all the way from she was a baby all the way up to, as recently as possible, and put a lot of effort into it. And that was tough, but it turns out it's way tougher taking it down. I waited like till yesterday, and we were cleaning out the back bedroom, and I just was like, time to do this. And I moved them all into picture books and just had myself a good 2.5 hour ugly cry, and it was good. It was all right, but that's the kind of stuff, you gotta, you put some stuff off, but it's going to happen eventually. So, but, had a couple good comedy shows. That was good. It's always nice to be a little distracted. Yeah. But, how about you? How was your week?
Yeah. Weird as always. Also kind of was disassembling some things from funeral time, things like that, and folding clothes, of Ethan's and things like that trigger a lot of things. Put some pictures up I had been not willing to do until I was ready to do it. And it's great, in its own right. It feels good to have this humongous photo of this beautiful boy, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it doesn't just dig deep to the bone, when you walk by it every day. But I find it really interesting, like what we do as the living for funerals. I always said this, like I just think it's such a weird it's a weird process of just in all of the traditions and things like that, and like rituals as far as funerals and all that stuff, making the cork boards and doing the programs and what picture do we use for this and what picture do we use for that, and writing the obituary. And it's really weird because when you're in that, the thralls of that part of this process, you kind of, it's like planning a wedding, sort of. Like nothing else really takes precedent over that. Your feelings kind of get put on the back burner, and then you throw yourself into the planning of this funeral type stuff. So, but I'm really grateful for professionals in that area, people who kind of hold your hand and walk you through, right. This is the typical stuff you do. I think those processes are super, super important. I think it's for us as the survivors of the people that we lost, they're kind of the last forefront of hand holding and that sort of thing. But there are processes before that. There's the process of the doctors and the hospitals and all the professionals that are there for the sick or the dying or the family. That sort of thing too. So
I had like a kind of a realization about that, the whole funeral. Like my mom's is the first one I was actively a part of doing all of that, picking things and all that stuff. Like I'd been to plenty of funerals and had plenty of people very close to me die, but I've never had to, obviously that was someone else's job. And I've also talked to a few people these last few weeks, people that have listened that have said to me, and it's a reaction I didn't expect to get. I expected people with similar situations as us to reach out and be like, I get what you're saying. But I've also gotten these messages from people that are like, listening to you guys talk about that made me realize that I've never had to go through anything like that ever. Yeah. Like, and I hope I don't. And it also made me realize, like, I don't even know how to talk to people like that or even, deal with that kind of stuff. And which was kind of a weird surprise. And I tried to put myself in that situation where, yes, I've been to a bunch of funerals where I wasn't that guy, but now all of a sudden I did this one where I am that guy. And I started thinking about, like, when you go to those and you look at those cork boards and you look at, random videos that people put together, or, the program, the picture, the songs you picked, all the way up to it, I don't think you think about just how tough that is.
Yeah, for the person.
Or was for the person that had to. You don't think about the great detail and the time and the worry spent. Mm-hmm. You just kind of like, well, that's nice. Look at that. Look at that. That's cool. Look at all the pictures of them. You don't think about the gallons of tears that were spilled.
Yeah.
Pilfering through those buckets of pictures, trying to find the right ones.
Yeah. And you certainly don't think about the disassembling of it months later.
Right. No.
We show up at, the church or the funeral home or whatever. We deliver our card. We sit through the service, and then we go home to our regular lives. Right. And we don't think about
exactly. And then we talked about, I think it was last week, the whole fear of missing out thing. Mm-hmm. Which really blows my mind, the people that pre-plan their entire funeral. Yeah. I couldn't do it. I'd be the kind of that's like planning a huge party and inviting all your friends and go, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to skip it. You're not there. It's not for you. My sister's my mom was cremated and that's what she wanted. And if I had my way, I would have much rather buried her and had a place to go.
Wow, just because, I'm the opposite.
I'm weird in my head. I didn't want them to burn my mom.
I hear
you. Know what I mean? To me, it felt like she existed more, intact. It's stupid and crazy. Yeah. And my sister was like, that's not what she wanted. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, well, it doesn't fucking matter what she wanted. She doesn't get to go to the party. It's you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not for you.
She's not even attending.
But it's another example of just all the weird stuff that you have to think about or go through or do or.
But think about what it would be like if that was your job. Think about if your professional career was based on death and dying and grief and sadness.
Tragedy.
So, And so I that's what I wanted to kind of unpack today was just what does it look like for somebody in that professional field?
And we've been talking about working on getting some guests in here, doing some interviews, getting people to hang out with us in this weird environment where we're just sad and upset. And we talked somebody into it.
We did. What a sucker.
I know. She's going to regret this decision.
She is going to regret it. So over here to my left is a beautiful smiling face. We have Heather. And Heather is a hospice nurse.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like as a career. What do you do?
First off, say hi.
Say hi.
Hi. I'm really happy to be here. I've never done anything like this before. It's a great experience, but I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome.
We're happy to have you.
We are happy to have you. I think you're going to be able to shed some light. I have always had questions about what you people do for a living.
What do you mean, you people?
You people. How you people do this, and how does it affect you personally? So tell me. You're a registered nurse, right? And you've been a nurse for how long?
I've been a nurse for almost 11 years. I've worked with hospice for 7.
Okay.
What was your field before hospice?
Long-term care.
Okay.
Long-term care.
Was it
nursing home type?
Nursing homes, assisted livings.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you had interest in, or was it a real good job popped up and you're like, I'll try it?
As far as hospice goes, my grandma was on hospice, and I always thought, wow, they did such amazing things, and I someday want to have something to do with that, whether it was an aide or a volunteer. At that time, I had no confidence that I would ever make it through nursing school to be a nurse, but and here I am. I didn't start off in hospice with my nursing career just because we have to take call, and it is not an 8-to-5 job, and we had small children and we worked opposite shifts, and that would have been a babysitting nightmare. You know, so when this opportunity came about, it was just that perfect time of life where it was like we could really make that.
It was like a mixture of something you had interest in and the opportunities there. So
Yeah.
I definitely know. I mean, we just met, but that's one of them jobs that my mom was a nurse, and being a nurse alone is one of the craziest, most taxing jobs ever. I've seen it firsthand, and not anybody can do it. But I imagine being a hospice nurse, it takes a special kind of somebody. So
it does.
Thank you for, you know what I mean? Because somebody has to do it.
For sure.
And it's one of them jobs that most people would be terrified of, but it takes good people to make it happen. And I definitely appreciate you doing that for sure. I have several questions, Tiff, but I know you probably have some.
Yeah, I do have some. So how do you feel it's different from long-term care? So you're watching the elderly perish, and that's what's to be expected, is that old people die, right? So we get old, we die. That's what happens. But when you transition over to hospice care, like, you see the broad spectrum of death, right? That it has really no biases and that sort of thing. So what has it been like for you to go from watching the expected to, like, at times probably some of the unexpected, right?
Right. Well, what's kind of, unique about working in, just going back a little bit, working in long-term care, you have a whole gamut of, yes, we're taking care of the elderly, but they're all at different stages of their golden years.
Sure.
And working for hospice, we're not always taking care of the elderly.
Right.
Sometimes we're taking care of very young people. Sometimes we're taking care of people that have maybe had a diagnosis 2 weeks ago. Maybe somebody that has been battling heart failure for 20 years.
Sure.
It's very different every day, but what they all have in common is that they're all at the end of their life. We're not talking about, when we talk about hospice, we're not talking about 5 or 6 more years, we're talking about 6 more months, or 6 weeks, or 6 days, and sometimes it's 6 hours. So,
wow. So a person can be on hospice care for a really elongated period of time.
They can.
Okay.
So hospice is a benefit that we come in when the textbooks and the doctors feel like they would have a 6-month life expectancy, but we all know that we're not textbooks, we're people. So
right.
Sometimes we are on a little bit longer than that, and we don't have. No one has that crystal ball.
Right.
No one has the crystal ball. So you could say, my doctor gave me 9 months to live, and 3 weeks later, we're gone. That's one of the hardest things to do, is to give that time frame. And so many people want that.
Yeah.
time frame.
I was going to say, that's probably a common question that people ask you, like,
yes. How long does mom have left? How long does grandma have left? What are we looking at for a time frame here? And we can tell them what we're seeing and what we've experienced in the past. But we always have to preface that with, we don't know.
Right.
We don't know. We're surprised often, you wouldn't think so, but we are sometimes, in our head, in our experience, we say, gosh, we've got to get everybody in there to help support this family. And right away, as soon as possible, she's declining quickly.
Right.
And 3 months later, that person is still with us. And then we have people that are status quo, and they lay down to take a nap, and they don't wake up.
Wow. So okay. So follow-up question. How does hospice training differ from regular nursing? So, like, when you entered into hospice nursing, what type of sensitivity type trainings was there special things involved in that? Like, what makes a hospice nurse, you're the people we kind of turn to, that's our last, like, comfort. And I assume that has there's something to do with some training there, right?
Well, where I work, we did not really sensitivity training, but we have to do a lot of end of life education. What are we expecting? And not just on the physical side, but also a lot of that psychosocial aspect of death with patients and with families. Different from other jobs that I've had, it's you used to think about how are we going to fix that? How are we going to make that person better? And you really have to flip your brain to, we know that we can't fix that, but we can manage this. We can make this person comfortable by doing this, but we know that we can't. We know this pain is from the cancer. We can control the pain, but we can't control the cancer.
Right.
Or I'm short of breath. I can't fix being short of breath, but I can make it so it doesn't feel like you've been running on a treadmill for an hour.
Because it's just as much about, what you do is just as much about giving comfort to the patient and rest as it is with the family too, right? So you are offering essentially, the same sort of care and comfort to the family of the people they're watching, as well as the patient. Yeah. Right.
We want to make sure. So as the nurse, I make sure that my patients are comfortable, that we're meeting their physical needs, but also their psychological needs and their family's needs, that their family has the training that they need to get on to the next step. And what's so great about hospice is we don't have to do that alone. We have a team. And one of the things when I went to work with hospice is I wasn't the only nurse on the floor, or I wasn't the only person that had to take care of that right now. We have a team. So maybe it's something that I'm not as good at as Jenny is, and we can bring Jenny in, or we have a chaplain and there's a lot of spiritual concerns in the house, or just those needs that's what's going to make them feel better, and
you can lean on each other
leaning on each other and working together, because it does take a village. It takes a village.
That's a weight you couldn't take on by yourself.
Yeah.
No, I can't imagine.
Definitely.
A question that made me think of talking about, just the acceptance of it, and I can make you comfortable, but obviously that we can't, they know where they're at, and the families do. I've always felt that, in 2012, my grandma passed away in her 80s, and before that, she was in the hospital and just kind of short of breath, and we found out that she had a blood clot in her lung that was taking up over 80% of her lung. But her body had found a way to adapt. She thought she was okay.
Yeah.
She wasn't in pain. She just was short of breath. And this doctor pulled us out in the hallway and was like, she doesn't have long. There's nothing we can really do. But she's in the hospital going, I'm fine. I want to go home. This is annoying to be in this hospital room. And when from the hospital, she went to a nursing home. And a week into that, someone from hospice came and spoke to her. And it was actually it was an older guy who she'd known through church when she was younger, which was kind of nice. It was someone that she kind of knew and trusted, but he held her hand and looked her right in the eye and flat out told her, there's a very good chance it's going to be 6 months or less. And in that moment, I feel like she realized it, and almost I feel like that was what turned it for her, because she went from having this sickness and thinking I'm fine to knowing death's on my door. And it was within a week after that it just went so fast. And I'm sure the actual sickness is a big part of that, but do you feel that people's mental state and what they're thinking about their life, or what they've accepted or haven't, or their fight or their will to fight, is a big part of what either keeps them around or doesn't longer? I do. I've seen a lot of things in my years with hospice, and I truly believe that there is a fight, and there isn't a give up too.
there are some people that, will just keep going until they have talked to every single person in their family or written every letter for each milestone that is to come for other family members, or just waiting for that daughter that they know the flight is in the air, waiting for that daughter to get home from Arizona. But then also that, and especially now, if it's just too much for a family to keep someone at home and they're working on transitioning to a nursing home, sometimes we see that give up too. Like,
yes.
I don't want that. That's, I want to die in my home. And we've seen that too.
Hospice provides care for people in their homes, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Not just in facilities and
wherever they're calling home at that time.
Okay. All right. That's cool.
Yeah. I feel like there was a follow-up I had, but I'm drawing a bit of a blank at the moment. This is why we do this in real time.
Yeah, it's great. So how has this job how does it affect you on a day-to-day? I mean, you are helping people transition to their next phase of life, which is death, or you're helping these families, transition into like this unimaginable loss, So how does that affect you, your psyche? Do you ever have days where you're just like, this is so much, I just can't do this?
I think one of the important things for me, and every person is different, with how I think it's very important to keep your work self away from your personal self as much as you can. And boundaries are really important. We are coming in and you have to be so compassionate and so empathetic, and sometimes just the first time you meet, it's like you're interjecting yourself into this very intimate and personal situation for a family and their loved one. And it's important to remember that we are there to guide them in their journey, and to keep that empathy and that compassion, but also not take it personally, which can be hard.
That would be hard.
Which can be hard. So for me, it's very important to just know where that boundary is for you, and don't cross that boundary, and don't let other people over that boundary.
I think that's kind of the question that I was wondering, is kind of the same what you just asked about the whole boundary thing is, you're seeing people at their lowest, everyone that's around you every day is probably having one of the worst days of their life.
Right.
And rarely, I'm sure, does someone come into your work and they're just like, I'm super happy today. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to be here. It's usually just not the case. And like you said, I would imagine you'd have to find a way to not take that personally, because there's just no other way around it.
Yeah.
But I also wondered, my friend Jake, who I do comedy with, he's a nurse's aide at a nursing home, and he gets to the point where they'll lose someone that has been there for years, and he takes care of these people every day. He gets to know them. He hears their stories. He becomes part of their life. And then in the last moments when they lose them, it kind of hits them a little hard sometimes. And I imagine the difference in that between hospice, where you're maybe only around these people for, who knows, a couple of days, a couple of weeks. Is it, and I guess you kind of already answered it, but is it kind of just better to be empathetic, but not let yourself get too attached to these individual situations, or else I imagine it would just take a lot out of you?
Sometimes it's hard to not get attached.
Right, I think so.
And developing close relationships, especially if you've taken care of someone for quite a while. because you do learn their stories and you learn about their families, and it is hard. It's hard to say goodbye. We love them. We love them too. It is hard to say goodbye. And one thing that we do that's pretty cool in our office is every month we have like an internal memorial service for all of our patients that we've lost.
Oh, cool.
So
that is cool.
We share, anybody that worked with them can share memories and remember them. So they do stick with us.
Sure.
They stick with us. And that's being human. That's being human. So feeling that sadness for our patients and for our families, that's normal. It's when we carry that grief with us that's not normal for the professional.
Sure.
For the professional.
It's got to be
role.
so hard to separate the two sometimes, though, like, because grief just shows itself all types of ways, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine there's got to be drives home, from work that you've left the office and you can't just shut it behind the door, right? You take it with you. You tearful probably at moments, angry.
Yeah.
Wonder, there's got to be so many things that go through your head, but it's like at some point you have to be able to switch it off, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's important that when I interviewed, and then every interview that I've ever been a part of has always been, this is what the job is. What do you do to decompress after work?
Yeah. How do you cope? How do you personally cope with the heavy, like this great big load of grief that you're carrying with you, and it's other people's stuff that they're projecting on you because it's your profession, but what do you do personally? How do you cope with that?
I like we were talking about before we really started recording, if I have a really bad moment or just need to let things out, I love to just be in my car and crank the radio and sing at the top of my lungs.
Yeah.
I'm really good. In the car, only in the car. Nobody else hears me. Nobody else hears me do
Just
that.
have to take your word for it.
We also do. I mean, so many people say I do yoga and I go to the gym. If I'm having a really bad day, I'll be honest with you, I'll just stop and get some Ben and Jerry's and just sit in front of the TV and just have I'm just gonna sit here and have some me time here. But we also do like support groups too, reaching out to our other team members that are maybe feeling the same thing. That's just kind of how.
Do you feel like because your specific field is so different than a lot of other nursing fields that do you find a connection with your colleagues that, like, 'cause I know there's sometimes in certain fields nurses don't always get along. They got a certain way of doing things, but I imagine there's like a camaraderie there because you guys understand and go through something that a lot of maybe other people can understand. I assume maybe there's an interesting bond there, maybe with some of your colleagues, probably.
Yes, yes and no.
Sure.
We all do, we all have our different roles, even though we all work together, and we're not together all the time.
Right, sure.
And, I don't think that there's anything specific or special as far as hospice goes with that. Every specialty has their own way of doing things. So I do feel bonded with our team, just because we have to rely on them.
Right.
We have to rely on them and we have to trust them just as much as we trust ourselves. So
I found and I think Tiff would agree, and it's a big part of our friendship is there's a comfort in talking to someone that gets what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially you could tell someone that's never done what you do about the specifics of some of that stuff, and they could maybe feel for you, but they wouldn't necessarily get it as much as someone that's like another nurse that's done it. And for me and Tiff, it was like some of the weird stuff that went along, feelings, emotions, thoughts that went along with losing my mom. She got that. So it was like there's a weird comfort in knowing someone, because you feel a little crazy sometimes, you know, you're like, this is, and then, but it's like this person gets it, so maybe I'm not as crazy. I guess that's kind of what I meant by that is, you know, I mean, it's good to have someone that gets your situation, I imagine.
Right. So. Like, for example, with that, if someone says, you know, it makes me sad that this person passed away, and then someone says, well, you work for hospice. Well, we're still sad when someone passes away.
Like you still have all the same human emotions.
You know, we still wonder how, you know, what's the next step for this wife or this son or,
So you mentioned that you guys do support groups after for the survivors. How do you feel that is as far as success? Do you find a lot of people find healing from that?
I think that it just depends on the person. There are some people that would rather do a one-on-one meeting with our bereavement coordinator or with our chaplain. And then there's people that want to be part of the group. And those dynamics can vary just depending on where everybody's at in their grief process. You know,
because for me, like,
so unique and it's so raw.
That's cool to know that there's options other than just the group setting. You know, because me personally, support groups they're not for me. They bum me out, man. I mean, they really do. And especially when you're dealing with a support group for people who've lost their children, like some people are never getting better, and I'm after something different, and I don't even know what looking better looks like, but I just don't find that in support groups. I was in a support group after my sister committed suicide, and it's a heavy topic anyways. It's different than most other types of death and grief, but it was just every day, it was just the horror behind the stories of the people who had killed themselves, and I knew then, I was like, this isn't for me. This is not for me at all. And it's but it's cool to know that there are different avenues you can travel as far as who you want to speak to.
If that does go back to how everybody's different. You know,
it does, yeah. Nobody's story is the same.
It does, and with hospice, part of hospice is after someone dies, you get bereavement services for 13 months after. So
what's that look like?
Well, again, everybody is. I say this all the time. Everybody's different. We are not cookie cutter people with how we live our lives and how we survive after someone dies.
We're not at our most put together at that point in our lives.
Right. So, you know, sometimes people are very open to having that extra support right away. Sometimes they're like, no, you know, I'm really not interested in that right now. But, you know, in our first year after our loss, there are a lot of firsts. You know, we're coming up on first
big time
Thanksgivings and Christmases, and it doesn't even have to be those big moments. And sometimes you don't realize that you need that extra support until you are in that, or you're coming up to that first, or even that second year where it's like,
oh, great, thanks for letting me know that. I appreciate it. I got to the first one.
Always happy to help. It could be every June I went fishing with my dad, and we took this big trip, and that was the one thing that you did with your dad. And so Christmas didn't really affect you, and you think, well, I'm going to be okay. Well, then May comes around, and then you're starting to think about, this is when I would have started planning this trip with my dad. That's what we try to identify in that bereavement process. Like, what are we going to be coming up on, and how can we help? How can we help get through
big. That is big. That's really big.
Whether it's pretty or ugly, or what if we did something different? And a lot of times people just need reassurance that what we're doing for me is okay.
Yeah, that is. And we talked about that a little before, is, for the first Christmas and the first Thanksgiving coming up, and it's scary, but you see it coming a little bit. And it almost goes back to like when someone dies and you have a lot of time to deal with it, it's a little easier than when it happens suddenly, like with us. But like, it's the little ones that I didn't see coming so far. I'm still in the first 6 months, but I told Tiff, one for me was, I got a couple months in, I got some medical news that was good news. Like I was on some new medicine that was doing what it was supposed to. Something really simple, but I got a letter in the mail that had good news, and it was just the first good news I'd gotten since, Mom died. And my first thought, which is the first thought I always had in life, was call Mom and tell her about it.
Right.
And then that thought came. It's like, that's not an option now. And then, you fall apart, and it's these little things that, you can prepare yourself a little for the Christmases and the Thanksgivings, but like you said, there's no way to know exactly what little thing's going to punch you in the face.
Right.
And the fact that you guys do stuff to help people through that's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's really, that's a really big deal. But it's also, hospice is not, your loved one doesn't need to be on hospice necessarily to participate in some of the services that you guys provide, right?
And those bereavement services, we, every family member, and any family member that, or friends, that anybody that had a relationship with our patients can be part of our bereavement program. But we also do community bereavement too.
I think that's good to know, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't realize that.
And all hospices do that. So you can reach out to them, and
so if you're listening,
they will offer that.
And it's something, you're hearing this and you're like, wow, I didn't know that. Reach out.
Yeah.
That's why they're there.
We'll also post some resources available through hospice that.
It kind of made me think of another question I thought of when we were just talking about that. Was, I know a lot of times you're dealing with the patient and you're dealing with the family, and you're trying to help the family through all this. But I do know that there are instances where someone doesn't have family and they don't have people, and they're in there alone, and maybe you're the only person that's there with them through it. What are the major differences between taking care of a patient like that, who's all by themselves going through the end of their life, as opposed to somebody who's surrounded by all their loved ones? As far as your job goes and what that entails?
Just depending on where they're living. If they're living at home, hopefully some extra help has gotten in there soon enough so we can figure out what their goals are, what do they want, so we can advocate for that when they can't tell us anymore, or bring extra help in, or provide an aid every day to help getting up and getting a shower, or let's talk to the neighbor next door and see if we can get her to help take your garbage out.
I imagine that the people who come to you who are kind of a solo act, that don't have any family, like Justin was saying, you become that, right? You step into that role and you become these people's
where their
family
support system.
Yeah. Which has to make those losses a little harder.
Definitely.
I would think.
Definitely.
Just because you've bonded over this thing that's about to happen in a totally different way, because you stepped into that caretaker role, you stepped into that sounding board role, and so I imagine that when the inevitable happens, that's got to cut in a different way. Yeah.
And it does. I mean, with people like that, we're the people that they're sitting there talking about, write this down because this is how I want my funeral planned.
Sure.
Or, it's very important to me that this item comes with me to the funeral home. It's very important to me that I'm not cremated.
Right.
And they put that trust in your hands to make sure that we do have those things in place and that we're ready, that we're ready for.
Yeah. What an amazing gift for you to be giving these people. I mean, the reassurance of because I imagine that a majority of people at the end are fearful, there's fear of the unknown or what will happen to me or whatever. But that little piece of assurance that you give these people, I have always just had the utmost respect for people that do what you do, because it really is just a beautiful gift. And not every passing, everyone that dies is beautiful and they just fall and they drift to sleep, or sometimes it's ugly and sometimes it's grotesque and that sort of thing. But they know that you're there, and that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I think that's what makes the job even more special, is the fact that not everyone is thankful or appreciative, and you still give them the same compassion, and it's always a hard job, but I imagine some instances are much harder than others, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. We don't see, maybe sometimes at first, because a lot of people are just afraid of hospice.
Yeah.
Or afraid.
Yeah.
Scary hospice nurse sitting here.
Yeah, right.
But that's just a stigma of hospice, and so a lot of times, sometimes people are really cold at first, or standoffish, or be careful with what we say around her or them, but then they realize this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We're helping. We're not. We're helping them. We're helping you. We're not speeding anything up. We're not slowing anything down. We're helping.
Mm-hmm.
We're helping with this transition. So a lot of times that turns around, and then there are a lot of times too that we are just fine, and the closer we get to our final day, that anger builds up. And so with that being said, our bereavement coordinators don't just take care of families after they die. Sometimes we have to bring them in before and say, we need to start this now, because there's a lot of unresolved issues, or there's a lot of feelings that we need extra help, help with this family, or even our patients, that there's a lot of things that aren't checked off yet for them, that after the death, it will be very rocky if we don't.
And some people like to hide from that,
sooner.
And they need someone to tell them that truth. That this is something that has to be done. We need to do this.
It's a crazy process, but that's really what it is a process. So trying to get ahead of the curve in some instances, I think, is probably pretty crucial. What's the youngest patient you've ever had?
25.
25. Mm-hmm. That's got to be
And
tough.
where I work, so hospice is for all age groups. We do not take care of children. So we're not licensed for the group that I work for. But I do know other hospice nurses that go and take care of a 90-year-old woman and turn around and go take care of a 9-month-old baby. So
Wow.
I personally would not want to do hospice care for children. I prefer grown-ups.
That's hard enough.
That's hard enough. Yeah.
I just always thought that would hit way too close to home. So have you learned in processing grief on your own? What does grief look like for you? What are your losses? I have lost grandparents. I have lost friends. I have lost a nephew.
But as of recently, it hit hard and hit home.
Yes.
Because you are also Ethan's mom.
Yeah.
Ethan's stepmom. And so we're mirroring each other's experience right now with the loss of our son. And so walk me through what it's been like for you to grieve the loss of your child, but also have all of this knowledge and know-how in the back of your brain. Have you implemented it? Do you feel like it's helped? Was this just like out of left field?
So I feel like it's kind of out of left field. We don't plan to ever bury our children. And it's very different to be on this side of the table.
Sure.
And I've said it since the day that Ethan died, as people are talking to me and saying, you're going to be able to help everyone so much because of what you do. And it's very easy to guide, but it's not so easy to walk.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So it's like all of my training and experience, it's there, it's there. So I know that when I have moments of sadness or anger or anxiety, I know that is normal, and
yeah,
we're going to get through this. And
you understand the process,
right?
Yeah.
But experiencing the process firsthand with a child, I feel like it doesn't matter what you have experienced in the past when you lose a child.
Right.
No one can prepare you for that.
Right. Yeah. And there's a moment that I kind of ruminate on the morning of Ethan's code. You were en route separately from Ethan's dad, Isaac, and from Kyle. So all three of you are traveling to me in Iowa City separately. And I had talked to the guys before, kind of told them what was happening. And then when I called you, it was like such a breath of air, because as much as I could explain to them what I had seen and what I believe we were up against and experiencing, there was a level of serious denial. And I felt very isolated in those moments because I knew what I had seen. And calling you, and I think that moment of really emotional vulnerability with both of us, we both knew. And it was just so comforting to be reassured that what we were really up against. And I knew the moment I saw you in the hospital that you understood, you knew where we were at. And I think a lot of that is your training in nursing and knowing what I had explained to you. And it just was it was a good moment for me in the worst time to just know that I had somebody there to have my back. And like I said, our experience is perfectly parallel because we raised this boy together. And and as horrible and tragic as it is, I don't know that I would ever be able to do it without you. Because as much as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to lay one to rest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
To touch just a little bit on what you said about having to go through it yourself, be different, obviously, than even with all your training. Like you said, you were able to tell yourself things like, you know, I know what's going on and all this different stuff. But in my experience is like, even having someone like Tiff or someone else, or even in my own head, just be able to tell myself like, okay, this is normal to feel this way, or this is how it's going to be, or this is something you have to accept, even though you know all that and you've been trained all that and you use it to help the people that you work with. You don't really want to hear that shit. You know what I mean? You're just like, and you're like, that's fine, but that doesn't make me feel better right now.
Right.
I don't want to accept that she's gone or he's gone.
Right.
I don't want to. It's going to get better. It's like, it's such a unexplainable thing.
Yeah.
The feelings and the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And even with all the know-how in the world, when it's your own thing, it's so different.
Right. It is. I almost, I almost don't have words. I know that one of the biggest things that helps me get through very bad moments is just the comfort in knowing that Tiff and Kyle know exactly what we're going through.
Yeah.
And they're the only two people in the world that know what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It is really a unique experience, and like how grateful and beautiful it is to have. And I told Ethan, and I know you did too many times, like, you don't even know how lucky you are, you ungrateful little shit. You have 4 loving parents. Like, nobody's, an alcoholic, nobody abuses drugs. They just all love you, and they love you hard, and love is hard, and you need to, it's just,
That's
it's just gratitude.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting for me on the outside looking in because today was the first time we met, but we crossed each other in the hall at Ethan's funeral. We didn't get a chance to meet, but watching Ike speak and watching you speak and watching Kyle speak, and especially watching you individually say what you needed to say to all those people when you were up there, your speech was so much more about and to the people that were still there with you than Ethan, because that's the thing I've gotten to know about you in a short amount of time is you say what you mean and you mean what you say.
Yeah.
You're not really one to bullshit much. Mm-mm. And that's why I knew what you were saying to each of them individually was right from the heart. And for me, everyone only knows their own experiences in life. And my experiences with a step parent have been awful. I have a stepdad that's just horrible. So to see like love and like real, like you guys are family, you and him were, how is your boy?
Yeah.
I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it just warmed my heart to see that between you guys and to know that not only did Ethan have a second mom that cared about him and a second dad that cared about him, but you guys together are able to realize that that's all so much bigger than so many couples have a hard time with, people split up, they're not meant to be together, they meet someone else. The fact that you can still be each other's friends, I think, is especially going through this thing, because that's so much better than not. And I think you guys should take your situation as someone on the outside looking in and just be very, very grateful for it, because it doesn't happen very often. And this shit's so much easier to go through when you got a team behind you.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents, I guess.
It's so true. It's so true. We try to stay in each other's space as much as possible.
Yeah.
And
Even when the other one doesn't like it.
Yeah. I know Ike doesn't always love it. Ethan's dad's is a bit of an introvert, and so is my husband Kyle, and Heather and I have this kind of solemn vow to each other to push each other to take steps towards one another, even if we're dragging these guys with us. Even though the common bond is not physically here anymore, the thing that bonds us together, it's more powerful than ever. I've always desired to have a friendship with you, and I know I've told you that since Ethan has passed, and always wanted to show my gratitude to you for helping me, raise this young man, and now I have that opportunity for the rest of my life, and I don't know if I would have ever gotten there if we hadn't lost Ethan. If our relationship and the friendship I so badly desired would have ever came to fruition, whether it was out of cowardice or I don't know, but we have it now, and that's what keeps me going. And like you said, it's the days where I feel really like nobody gets it. I know that there's two people out there who do, and they understand it completely. And so a phone call or a text message or whatever is so reassuring that, okay, they're still here. We're still here. And I think it'll be a lot of years of that. Like it or lump it. So.
It's just different. It's, you talk to so many different people about it, everybody, whether they're family, friends, and you share things with people, and it gives you different feelings and emotions, but dealing with it with people that get, like, for you guys, each other, for me, just last week, you think you're putting some good days together and some good weeks, and you're getting better. And my sister came over, and she's my only sibling, and my mom raised us. It was always just her and us, and she's the only one in the entire world that gets specifically, like, exactly what I'm feeling. And there's just something about that that you can't really explain. Me and my sister don't even really get along all that well, but there's a moments,
tether.
It's just like,
nobody else
everything
gets
you're
it.
saying is everything that's been going on in my brain, and it's just it's it sucks because it's super hard, but it's super comforting at the same time.
I mean, that's what we've been saying since the beginning of this.
It forces you to go places you don't want to go.
Right. We need each other. Like it's just it's the long and short of it.
And and as with Ethan, it's I love when we share things about, like, share a memory, because you have memories of Ethan that we don't have, and we have memories of Ethan that you don't have. So
it's cool.
It's
and we would have never known those things.
And we wouldn't have known those things.
We would have never known those things
unless Ethan tattled on us about something.
Oh, he told me some shit.
We'll talk about that.
It's for off-air time. But so just like really quick before we close up here, did you ever, after we lost Ethan, did you ever think about not going back to hospice?
I did. And sometimes I still do.
Yeah.
Before I went back to work, I was scared. I was scared to go back because my wall of protection, emotional protection, was gone.
Yeah.
And just feeling vulnerable and feeling like, how can I help how can I talk to someone and help them over this hump when I'm walking my own. How can I help you with your journey if I'm walking my own journey and I cannot see what's in front of me right now? Yeah. And so I do think about that. Mm-hmm. Some days are very, very hard for me, and some days are very good and therapeutic for me. I imagine that as time goes on, my wall is slowly building up. back up.
Yeah.
But, you know, right now it's exhausting to be aware of that.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know.
I would say my extremely uneducated advice for that is try to cling to those therapeutic moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, like this show is hard. It's hard. I don't like crying into a microphone. I don't like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be the funny guy. People are supposed to know me as the guy on stage making everybody laugh, not the dude making everybody cry. But just in a short month of doing this, the letters we've gotten, the messages, the people stopping us in public, telling us stuff that I don't even fully understand. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, you have no idea how much I've gotten out of listening to this and how much I needed it and I didn't know it. And it's like, I'm very appreciative of it, but I don't think I fully grasp it yet. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's making it worthwhile to me is, yeah, it's super hard, but man, we're getting something out of it, aren't we?
Yeah. It's the work.
We got a flipping letter from the senator last week.
Yeah.
Thanking us because we were in the paper, and she's like, thank you for being brave enough to take on this journey. And it's like, it's
a big deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's bigger than we even realize. I think we're trying to accept it.
Yeah.
And we're going to take it as
and like
far
for
as we
me,
can,
it's just like, this is just the cheapest option of therapy. Like, and I think it's something I just so badly desired when I lost my sister, was just a real vulnerable take on what it really looks like, and bringing people in that specialize in loss and grief and death, educating ourselves on, you know, doing some head education, some heart education. And for me, it just is like, it's too big and so much to not share. Mm-hmm. And it's been really good for me selfishly. Like, sure. I'm doing this for me, but meanwhile it is helping. And
I think that's a big reason we've got a list of people we want to talk to, obviously. But we wanted to get you in here first because not only does the knowledge you have apply big time to what we're talking about, but you're involuntarily tethered to this show. And I think we waited to the end to tell people that, because not only because it's a good reveal and it's probably good for ratings, but just the fact that it just goes to show that everybody's got different jobs and different things, and everyone also has life that doesn't stop going and things that happen to them, and there's just things you can't avoid, and everybody goes through stuff. And I'm sure a lot of the people that come in and are sitting with these patients that are their family members don't take a look at you walking in with your stethoscope and think, man, she's probably got some shit going on too, or she's probably lost somebody, or she's probably had or is having these same feelings I'm having. It's just, we're very selfish when we're in those moments. Mm-hmm. And it just, like you said earlier, I think a good way to bring it back is we're all human.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's different. Everybody's got different experiences and skill sets.
And what we know about grief is it touches us all. Mm-hmm. That's what you were saying. Like, when people approach you or approach us or whatever, and they spill it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we don't even really know what's happening.
I've learned from them even without them even realizing it. Like, people that have approached me and been like, I lost my mom 10 years ago. And listening to that, it's exactly what I wish someone would have talked to me about then.
Yeah.
Or at all. And it's like, for me, it's like, okay, I'm going through all these firsts, and it's like, oh, I'm okay for a week, and then I'm not. And it's like, 10 years? Really? Like, you're still hurting 10 years? But it helps me realize, like, the journey I have ahead of myself. You know what I mean? And
also where you don't want to be.
Right.
You know?
I think accepting how huge it is is the hardest thing, but, like, the most important thing, too.
Yeah.
Which I'm far from there.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. Yeah. Everybody's doing their best out here.
That's right. So in closing, Heather, what can you tell our listeners? Like, how can they acquire your services? Like, how can hospice come into play? How does that work? Is it just like a national hotline? Like, hey,
no,
you got a dead and dying person? Give us a call.
There's usually not commercial.
Okay.
Call 1-800. No, there are multiple entities that provide hospice care. Lots of different companies. Most hospitals have hospices right there, located right there at the hospital. Then there's privately owned groups. If you Google hospice in your area, or even if you call one that you know in your area, they should be able to give, if you ask for a list of other providers in the area, they'll give it to you.
Awesome.
But there are a lot of, hospice is a great resource, even for a community need. If you didn't have anything to do with hospice, we've got people that can help, or guide you or give you the resources that you need to guide you to where you need to go.
Awesome.
So,
and it's like, for everybody listening, I feel like we get to the point where we're just kind of talking to each other, and I sometimes forget that we're doing this for lots of people to listen to. It's just, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
But like you've said in a prior episode, find me one person that's gone through something like this completely alone from beginning to end, and we're able to do it successfully. You can't do it.
You can't do it.
You got to have some kind of help. And
got to reach out.
I think it's so important for people to not only know that you got to do it, but there's lots of resources too. Like, you don't have to.
It's as simple as just picking up the phone, asking questions, being vulnerable.
And there's nothing, don't be too prideful, and random stuff like that.
That's
you know
right.
What I mean? It's just, we're all people.
Pride will keep you sick. It will. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but Justin and I have no pride, no ego. So
plenty of shame, but no pride.
A lot of shame. Heather, thanks for coming and sharing your expertise in your field, but also just opening your heart up a little bit. And
we know firsthand this isn't the easiest thing to do, so we definitely appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you guys for doing what you do.
And we will list some resources available in our area through hospice on our Friends with Death Benefits Facebook page, and we'll close it out. Justin, always a pleasure, sir.
It is. It's good to see you.
It's good to see
really
you.
Is.
Yeah, I know it is.
Oh,
I actually know it is.
That's a good note to end on.
Yeah. So until we meet again,
hang in there.